Hello, and welcome to episode 24 of the Makers.dev podcast, and welcome back, me, to the Makers.dev podcast. Chris, how's it going?
It's going okay. I had some good things happen this week. I had some bad things happen this week. Overall, doing okay.
It's funny you should say that, because I also had some good things happen this week, and some bad things happen this week. The worst of which is just debilitating for me living in Texas in the summer. I have a terrible grass pollen allergy, which, like, of all the allergies to have, grass is just everywhere. Like, it's not like I can avoid it in food. And it happens seasonally, and like this is one of the seasons where if you go on one of these allergy trackers, it's like very high every single day of the week, specifically for grass pollen. And last summer I solved this by driving to Ohio, where Timothy grass doesn't grow. And now I'm dating this woman, and I really like this relationship, and she's in Dallas, and she has a regular job. And also my family's all in Dallas, and like it's super fun hanging out with them. And I would love a solution to this problem. It's oh man, it's not fun.
Yeah, move to Arizona. That's the solution I know about.
Yeah, that's what Amy Hoy did, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that seems to be just move somewhere where nothing can live, and that's the environment I would need. Yeah, no, it sucks, and is like it's really hard to do work when breathing is impeded. I don't like it. I love the concept of in this last episode. So I was in Austin on this trip when we would have recorded the last episode. I love doing the guest things. That was so cool. Learning all about Boring Rails and Matt Swanson and what he was up to. That was a fun diversion from the usually scheduled program. That'd be a cool thing to do next time one of us, but not both of us, is out.
Yeah, it was neat to get someone else's perspective on some things. Talked about a lot of different things that I think a lot of people, a lot of problems that people have are similar, I think, across, he's doing some consulting and also writing Boring Rails, and he also grew a Twitter, following for himself and for this Canadian Football League. And so, it's just kind of interesting conversation.
Love it. That episode was posted about 10 minutes before we started recording this. So
yeah, it was.
I can't. I'd love to dig into like stuff that he said. If there were hot takes you did, I'd probably have my own hot take, but that might have to wait until next week. Cool. So tell me about the good things that happened and the bad things that happened. I saw on Twitter you got the first place. You were in the number one spot in your AI competition. That's amazing.
So, well, it's not done yet. There's 3 weeks left. I got to first place. I was passed by the team behind me. The team behind me is pretty good and coming hard. But this is part of the some good, some bad stuff. So imagine like the whole process. I don't want to talk in too specific detail because the contest is still happening. But it's like, I've been doing it for 3 or 4 weeks. I made a sort of fatal error around day 2. And didn't realize it until recently. And I can talk about this more later when the contest is over, but that first place was not quite what it seemed, I think. It was still good, right? Not quite what it seemed, because the public leaderboard and the private leaderboard are different. And it is mostly unrecoverable. So I have to basically go back to kind of the start. It's not totally wasted. I learned a bunch of stuff, and I can apply some of the same things that I did. But without getting too specific, it's like, how do you deal with it? I almost just didn't do it because I was like, I have to redo, 3 weeks of work or something. And I basically can't use anything that I did for the last 2 or 3 weeks. The good news is I think I'll get there relatively quickly. So, if it took 3 weeks to do it before, it'll probably take me 3 days to catch up to where I was. But yeah, so that was some of the good and some of the bad that happened with that.
What a setback. There are 2 leaderboards. There's an internal and an external leaderboard.
Yeah. So what they don't want you to do is so there's what they call a public leaderboard, which is what they use all the way up until the end of the competition. And what they don't want you to do, if that was the only score, then you could like just keep submitting files, like guessing basically, and then keep the guessing row by row, and then keep the ones that do good. And so you wouldn't be solving the problem. The strategy is called leaderboard probing. Because you're like probing the leaderboard for weaknesses basically, or for the right answer. So to get around that, they basically have a small portion of the total rows be the public leaderboard, and the rest of them be the private leaderboard. So when you're increasing your score before the end of the competition, you're increasing it on a small number of rows. And then at the end of the competition, they rescore everyone on all the rows.
Gotcha.
And a very, very common mistake is to what's called overfit to the public leaderboard. So you see your score go down. That's great. You keep doing more of those things. And then I made a few submissions that made me realize that I was overfitting to this public leaderboard. I was basically doing better on the public leaderboard than on the private leaderboard. And I won't quite, there are, ways you can sort of figure that out using, there's different cross-validation techniques and stuff. And when they don't match up, you realize you've done something wrong. And I realized the thing I did wrong was like 3 weeks ago. And so,
Gotcha.
So I kind of have to redo a lot of work, which stinks.
That does stink. I'm sorry. And also, what a great solution to this problem of. I had the thought, like, why wouldn't you just overfit the data to the score if they're giving you the score? So that's a very elegant solution to just hold back a lot of the data, and then at the very end they're scoring you on the actual data. I can imagine that would be like very dramatic. Of like the leaderboard just flips, and the people who were at the bottom were actually doing the deeper, more fundamental work to fit it well. So it could be more of a vanity metric to be scoring high on the leaderboard if you're not getting the fundamental things right.
Yeah, it's really super common. At the end, you can see how many places people jump or fall, and people jump or fall by like 100 places.
Wow.
So yeah, yep.
How interesting. And yeah, you could jump or fall by 100 places because if it actually is a really difficult problem and the people who are all scoring higher are merely overfitting to the public data, then yeah, what an interesting analogy of like, because you think about like, maybe someone who's running their company or running their life in a way that, if it's their life, they're posting a bunch of things on Instagram, like, look how great my life is, and look at this, I'm on this vacation in Maui. Oh, it was so interesting. When Sarah and I went to this Airbnb of these tiny houses, beautiful spot in Austin in the hill country, and there's like places where you can make a grill to cook up your food, and there's like these wild chickens, and it was just serene, and it was really close to this amazing hiking. And Sarah and I get there, and I don't think we posted a picture the entire time. We're just like enjoying it, and like we took some pictures for memories and things, and but didn't post any of it. I don't know that anyone on social media knows that I even went to Austin. And there was another couple there that went to this A-frame house across the way, and they got there a little bit after we did, and they were taking pictures the entire time. And it's like this, like you could tell they were working, and just looked amazing. And they were gone. I think they stayed the night there, and they were gone like before we woke up the next morning. And like they were overfitting to the data. They were overfitting to the public data. Their experience of that. Someone looking at the social media feeds of Sarah and me versus this couple would be like, wow, this other couple is having such a great time. And like, look at this. They spent all this time and look at all these pictures. They must have been here for like 2 weeks, but they were there for like a night. And the analogy I'm getting is like, this is sort of a difference in strategy of life. It can seem like you're doing very poorly compared to everyone else, but it may just be that everyone else is playing the game of making themselves look good, or like having the shorter term strategy. And over the long run, it sounds like having the strategy where you're actually doing the fundamental thing that you need to be doing, you're actually making the AI algorithm fit the actual data, or you're actually enjoying nature and working on your relationship. That strategy would be better over time.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. I had another thought too, more business related, which is like it was kind of like I had a startup idea and I was asking people, and they said, "Yeah, it's great," but when I actually found out how and I got a glimpse into how it was actually going to do, it was very poor. And so to be fair, it's not very poor. I was slightly directionally off in a way that I know that I'll drop places when it comes to the end. And so to fix that, I have to kind of go back and redo the beginning steps.
I'm reminded of John Carmack's strategy for building software, he has some quote. I'll try to dig this up for the show notes, but it's a quote along the lines of like, when he has ideas for two different approaches to do something, the impulse is to like research both of them and then pick a direction and then do it. He'll do both. If he's like, oh, should this be multi-threaded or single-threaded? He'll be like, I don't know. Let's try both and let's do it. And what I've sort of embodied that in my own life as like, in situations where I need to recode something entirely, that's still going forward. And like, I wouldn't have been able to get to the point where I'm at where I can go forward if I hadn't already gone through the first part. And the second time you build something is just so much better that even if you have to start from scratch, the understanding you have about the problem and the pitfalls of that, you're able to go forward in a way that you could not have from the start. You need to make those mistakes in the beginning to be able to have those advances in the future. So, as a word of encouragement, it may not be as bad as it seems, and this may not actually be a setback. It may be like the process that you had to go through to discover how to do this.
Yeah, and not just that, but like, you can read all the warnings you want about it. Like, people post all the time about the types of things that I did. Like, I made a mistake. That's pretty common, right? But now that I've viscerally gone through it and have to redo work, like, I won't make this mistake again, ever. So that's the way it goes. Yeah. On the plus side, I'm getting things that I had found difficult with AI before, I'm finding easy now because I've gone through all this, and so that feels really good. Like, I'm starting to turn the corner about understanding a lot of different things. I feel like, the learning is working, and so that's all great on that side. So pretty excited about all that. I keep looking at systems because I'm using Google Colab, which is great. It feels like I realized it feels like I'm always on borrowed time, though. So like, every time I'm on that thing, I'm like, well, like, even now there's something running and I have to click on that website every 30 minutes or else it's going to close. Like, that's the biggest thing. And then I looked at another Kaggle contest that has like 38 gigs of bird noises, which is very interesting. But if I want to, I can pre-process it on my computer, but I still probably have to push, I don't know, 15 gigabytes of stuff to Google Drive and then use it on Google Colab, which is just not sustainable long term. So I'm like, all right, if I want to do this for these other kind of image projects, I really need to buy my own machine. So I think you're right. I will probably do that at some point.
I knew it. Neither of us can resist buying a new piece of tech. Cool. I'm excited to hear about that new machine. I think that makes a lot of sense for the stuff you're doing. Especially because, like, you've been in this contest for a month, and it's going to go on for like another 3 weeks. Like, this doesn't feel like a short-term thing that you're just picking up for fun. Like, this AI has a thread in your career that's been very strong, and if there's a way that you can spend money to improve your workflow to make it easier to do these sorts of things, like, yes, absolutely, I think do that every time. It's difficult to find opportunities like this to, like, the way that I frame this in my own life is like, okay, I can spend $2,000 right now to get a computer, and that's going to speed everything I do up by like 10 or 15%. Is there another way that I could spend that money that would get me a similar outcome? And like, no, I wish there was. I wish I could buy 10 computers. But I just get the benefit from the first one. And then I have to look for a new creative way to spend the next money. So like, yeah, this is a very clear, straightforward way to spend money to make the work that you do faster and make that process easier. I think absolutely that makes so much sense. I was reminded in your description of like the advantage of that, this is a thing people say not to do, but now that you've done this mistake, this feels so cloak and dagger, like mysterious. Of like, what did you do? I'm excited to like have the reveal of what was actually going on here. But the way you're describing it, of like, it sounds like a thing that people know not to do, but having actually done it, you now viscerally remember the mistake of, oh man, don't do this because this is what burned me 3 weeks in that competition. That to me is what expertise is. I'm reminded of the video series you did where you were recording every step of building a SaaS, and there were these videos, they were like a minute and a half long, And there were 3 different times in one of those 1.5-minute videos where you were like, oh, and don't do it this way because, it takes the DNS 2 days to propagate, so you have to do it this way. Each one of those things took, 2 weeks each for you to figure out. And now you're in this spot where you can more gracefully navigate these treacherous waters, this partially submerged stone path in the bog, because you've walked through it dozens of times. So yeah, I think this is what it looks and feels like to gain mastery over something. So it sounds like you're killing it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And yeah, I was super bummed out for a few hours, and then I was like, all right, went back, I redid a bunch of stuff, and now it is like, so it's running right now, and we'll see how it goes. So I think it'll do all right.
How annoying to keep having to jiggle your mouse every
I know
10 minutes. Is that what you said?
I think it's 30 minutes. I think it's variable. Like, they don't really say this. Like, if a lot of people are using the resources, then they'll kick people off who haven't touched their session for a while, which is just really, really annoying. And so even if I have to overpay, so I priced it all out. I could talk about this for a long time, but I priced it all out. If I use it 24/7 for a year, then it pays for itself. Which I won't. I could also do crypto mining on it, like we talked about. I don't know if I want to. I have to worry about my power bill, and I'd also, the machines I'm looking at are like near the upper limit of what like household circuits will like handle. Like one or two of these big GPUs will like max out, like 8 amps or 12 amps. And so I have to worry about like what else is on my power circuit. So yeah, working through all that right now.
What a project. What a flex also that like my computer is so powerful. It's maxing out the circuits in my house.
Yeah, and it won't happen all the time, but yeah, peak load, for these GPUs when they first spin up is like 8 amps. So
that's nuts.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, yeah. How much are you thinking of spending on this? I may be totally off with it.
So you're a little bit off. It would cost, so the GPU itself, retail price, if I want one, would be $1,500, and then I need to put a computer around it, which is another $1,000. So retail price, $2,500.
Okay.
Right now, because of all the crypto stuff, the cheapest I can get is $4,000, and I'm not even 100% sure that would work because it comes with Windows and I have to install Linux, really, and so there's like this whole process. If I just
$4,000 for the whole computer or just the $1,500 GPU?
For the whole computer, yeah.
For the whole computer, okay.
Yeah. If I want a good setup, it's about $5,000. If I want a good setup that's pre-set up for deep learning, so already has Ubuntu installed, has a warranty and everything, that's more like $7,000. And if I'm spending that much anyway, then I could spend another $3,000 and get a giant dual, GPU thing. So $10,000 gets me like the real. So I don't really have that kind of cash to just put down though on a giant machine that isn't making me money.
Yeah,
so, but I could buy the cheaper ones. So. Yeah.
Oof. Yeah. Okay. $10,000 is a little harder. So okay. I think the question I'd be asking is like, is there a way that you could spend $10,000 that would be better than buying this computer? So like, for $10,000 you could hire someone in the Philippines to just constantly keep your sessions alive, and that would be their salary for like a year. Or I don't know, you could hire a personal assistant at $20 an hour for 10 hours a week, and $200 it's like what, 5 months of a personal assistant like that.
Yeah,
are there other ways that you could spend that money?
I mean, so that's why I did the math. Like I could do this on cloud instances. So I could do spot instances that aren't Google that cost it's like a $1.25 or so for a similar card per hour that I keep it on. Not for the $10,000 one. That's for the $4,000 one. And it's about double that for the $10,000 one. So, yeah. Or I could just keep using Google Colab and deal with the, and that's $10 a month. And so, like, if I'm competing on price, I can't beat Google. So,
yeah.
We'll see.
Is there not a more elegant solution to like keep the session alive? I would think
there's hacks you can do.
Chrome extension to it. Okay.
There are JavaScript console things you can do to keep it alive. Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the time, I'm not letting it run that long, really. And if I am letting it run that long, it's on a problem which the Google Colab thing isn't power enough to handle anyway. So it's like for networks that really need that long training time, you need a more powerful setup anyway. So, yeah, several things to consider. But
okay, not quite as clear cut as I thought it would be. Yeah, 10 grand is a lot.
And to be
for a thing that's not making money.
I probably won't buy that one, but
Okay.
yeah, because that's a lot of money.
If you're gonna spend 8 grand, you might as well spend 10 grand.
Right. But if I can spend 4, then that's different. So
Yeah. Or just have the instance. Huh.
Anyway, so that's all AI stuff. I did some SaaS stuff too. So I started this work in progress the session with Alex Hillman, and so it's going to be like we started with a group of 3 for the starter session, and then there's like a group of 12 that meets every 2 weeks, and then there's like a Discord chat and other things, and that is going to be good for Meeting Place. That's going to keep me on track. It's going to so the first one was all about goals, like what the goals are for the 4 months, and we have homework about creating goals and stuff, and so it feels good that, you know, someone else is pushing me to do things that I know I want to do but are hard for me to do. And so I'm excited. You know, I haven't fully processed like what my goals are and all that stuff, but I can talk about that next week probably. And it is exciting that I'm going to move forward on Meeting Place, even though what I want to do is just spend time and money on stuff that's not making me time or money.
I feel that. I like it. It's funny you're doing this too. I think I had this subliminally in my mind. I'm working on a project with Sarah, and realized that like the best way to push that forward would be re-going through 30 by 500. And every time I've gone through it, like I've gone through half of it twice. The whole second half of it is like how to build things, which wasn't as appealing as the marketing side of it. But yeah, going back to those fundamentals, and from Alex Hillman especially and Amy Hoy, what fantastic resources of information in how to do this. So yeah, cool. I'm excited to hear about your goals, and I'm doing something similar by going back through 30 by 500.
Yeah. And if you want the light version of that for our listeners, so Alex Hillman has this book called The Tiny MBA. It's an ebook. It's like $10. I think it's super good value for what it is. And then Amy Hoy has a book called Just Fucking Ship, and that is all about how to get stuff out.
So good.
Yeah, if you read those 2 things, you'll get 80% of the way there. So I think that's $10 each, and you get a full education.
This is a bigger point just about expensive courses in general. Is like there are no unique pieces of information. There are only unique messengers. Like if you're balking at the price of this course, and it's a very expensive course, don't do it, and get a book instead. You all of this information is freely available, but like the thing that you're paying for is to have it spoon fed to you and organized in a series that makes sense, and like have a step by step so that you feel like you're making progress. But if you're able to read a book, like my gosh, that's what a superpower you have to be able to extract this very valuable information that would otherwise be very expensive if it's digested just a little bit more. It's all the same sort of stuff.
Yeah. Cool. So that was what I got up to. How about you?
I didn't get any of the things I wanted to get done in the last episode. And I can make very good excuses for doing that, of like moving through times and dealing with these stupid allergies. But we're not going to talk about that. I'm just going to get it done for this next week. So what I would love to talk about on my end is the 2 things that I found myself gravitating towards. I've got these 2 projects that I keep pushing forward just like for fun. And I would like your hot takes on them. The first one is a book reader that right now I'm only building for myself because I have difficulty thinking about how I could implement this as a commercial product. Here's my pitch for it. Reading a book is difficult because it's presented linearly when actually the content is hierarchical. Like it's a nested tree structure. It's like we start off at the title of the book, and then there's all the chapters, and those are like the major sections, and then within each chapter are smaller subsections, and then within that are paragraphs, and within those paragraphs are like ideas. And I read a book recently called How to Read a Book that talked about this method that grad students use to go through content like this, which is you go through it in multiple passes where each pass you're going in a slightly deeper layer. So like the first pass, you just read the title and the chapter headings and the table of contents, and then the second pass you go through and like read all the section headings in bolded words, and then the third pass you go through and like jump around and dig deeper. So I would love to build a ebook reader that actually takes advantage of the medium. Current ebook readers are just like, it's like reading a PDF. It still has this analogy of that there's a page and it's still presented linearly. We're not really taking advantage of, hey, you know, this is a digital medium. We can do this in a totally different way. And I have been building this for myself, and I love it. It makes so much sense for me of the way that I want to read book content and the way that I want to take notes on it. My flow for this is like I'll go through in a chapter and summarize a paragraph, and then after I'm done with a section, I go back and summarize the section, and then after I'm done with the whole chapter, I'll go back and summarize the different sections. And now I feel like I've extracted everything from this book that I can be. And that's what I'm working on, and I love it. And it's like very valuable work for me to be pushing forward. And if the only thing this accomplishes is that I'm able to better read books, and like I've made a much better system for me to read books, like this project will be a success. So I'm pushing it forward no matter what. But I'm curious what your hot take on that is, of like, is this something that could be a business? Is this something that should be an open source tool? I'll give you a little bit of the background on like technically what's happening here is I need to take an EPUB and split it apart and then process it into a hierarchical tree structure and then make a book a JSON file. And then I'm taking that JSON file and like writing notes on it. And it's right now it's a really manual process, and I'm not sure that it could be perfectly automated of like, input your EPUB here, and then I'll output a JSON file. There's a little bit of handcrafting that needs to go into it. And like, I don't think I can sell books. Could I go to a publisher and say, hey, I reformatted your books in this new format, and I want to sell it on my platform and give you a cut of it? I'm not sure how I would even do that. Or is this just a tool that I open source, or is this a tool that like I could sell with a tutorial of how to process your books? What's your hot take?
Yeah, there's lots of interesting things you could do with that. I don't see, I don't have the knowledge to really know how you could turn it into a commercial product. There might be. It seems difficult to go to consumers and do this because you have to like educate them first, and that's always difficult. And I'm trying to think of like places where people ingest a lot of information and need it hierarchically like stored. But like in general, so I've sort of had a thought before, but in the reverse about writing a book this way. So like, it's kind of the way I did my React book, but the way generally I think you can write books relatively well are like, like start with like 2 points, like what you're going to start with and what you want the book to, say in the end, then break that out into like 10 points, like this is the linear way to get to that path. Then break each one of those out into chapters and write a paragraph about what the chapter is going to be about. And then break each one of those paragraphs into, a section or whatever. So that's sort of interesting that you are going at that the other way, like digesting it backwards from how I was thinking about like writing a book. So that's kind of neat. And then, so the one thing I did think of is, so Joel Hooks, who is one of the co-founders of egghead.io, he has talked a lot about like how people learn, basically, how people go through material, especially nonfiction material, and he has hired consultants to help him do that. There are people whose like, kind of consulting practice it is to help other people learn. And this feels like in that vein. So it's like, how do people take in information, and then how do people learn? And then another one of my thoughts, so it may be, interesting to go back. You can go through his old tweets, or you can actually, reach out to him and ask who those people are. I don't remember offhand. And then this is also like, so this could be valuable to people learning new things, especially like things in textbooks. This could also be super valuable for people writing new things. So like if you had a bunch of people reading this way and you started recognizing patterns in how they read, then that may inform writers about how to better write books. So that's something to think about. But these are all sort of research ideas and not what to do with it. I think if you enjoy it, you should continue doing it for you. I don't see the immediate way you could turn it into. I mean, you could open source it obviously, but turning it into a commercial product, I don't see the immediate way you could do that, except just as a reader. Like if you fully automated it, doing it as an EPUB reader, maybe you could get people interested in reading that way. Yeah, I don't know. That was kind of a rambling hot take, but those are the things I thought about.
Good takes. I had the thought in you saying that this is how you write books. Maybe I could flip this product around and make it a book writer like that. That would actually be pretty straightforward in the way that I made it.
Yeah, and you could. So with that, the place I was going with that when I did this was years ago actually that I thought about writing it this way was like you could write a whole system that like it gives you a prompt for the day that you sort of predetermine. So your prompt for the first day is write how you're going to start the book and then what you want to prove by the end. And the prompt for the second day is write the 10 points that you need to prove in order to make that proof. And the prompt for the third day is write the summary for this point. And then you do it 10 days in a row. And then write so like it's kind of like a self like you give yourself all your prompts like in order. So it's like how to write a book in a box kind of thing. So that's kind of where I was going to go with it personally, but
I like that. How interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because then you could just take, the 10 subpoints on day 2. Those then become, okay, well, we're going to work for the next 10 weeks then, because each of those things is going to be its own week-long thing. And walking you through, okay, yeah, that would be a very different product for a very different type of person, but that's a very cool idea. I like the idea of learning consultants. I'll look into that from Joel Hooks. And then giving better analytics on how people read books is not something I'd thought about. I don't know what Amazon gives you, but that would be incredibly useful. Like, Google Analytics for blogs. If you could see, oh man, I have 80% of my readers dropping off on chapter 3. What's going wrong in chapter 3? And then you could revise that content. I think part of what I'm lamenting in this is that I'm looking for a medium that doesn't exist. I'm looking for a medium of publishing digital content that's the length and the polish of a book, but that's a digital native format. We have blog posts, but if a blog post is over 10,000 words, that's unusual. That's a very long blog post, and people don't really have the method and systems to read a blog post that's that long. A blog post is like 10 minutes, and you read it from email or something. And people have routines with books where they'll go and sit down in their cozy chair and read through a book and process that information for a longer time. And you can sort of do that with ebooks, but I think what I'm grasping at is how might we have a better way to ingest long form, much more polished content that's like a book but in a more digital medium. Still chewing on it.
Yeah,
there's
So there's a couple other places. So learning paths is a whole thing. So how do you learn a complex topic with sort of discrete information? I know it, Pluralsight and Egghead sort of both, and other video sites, they sort of push you towards videos that they think will help you based on what you've done in the past. That's sort of like what this is. Newline.co, they make lots of books, the technical books, and they're sort of working on a platform sort of like this too, which is how do we make a sort of web native book where, because technical books, it's 500 pages and no one reads through 500 pages. So if you do it online, it can be you can sort of pick and choose what you do, and then based on what you do, it suggests the next sort of topics, that you can do. And I know they're they're grappling with that a little bit. So yeah, I think there's something there, especially again, this is one of those things where it's super valuable if you can help people learn things faster. How to get there is tricky, but you're onto something, I think. I mean, I don't see the initial or the commercial value right away, but I think if you continue in this vein, I think you'll find something interesting.
I guess the bigger problem here is what's the best way to be absorbing content? Video is also really good, but video has its disadvantages of that it's presented linearly and you can't really see an entire overview of the topic. I'm learning how to build tiny houses, and there's a course that I bought that has a book and then accompanying video lectures. And the video lectures go with the book, but they're not together. It's it's like the content in the book is over here, and it's this PDF that's 200 pages long, and then the videos are over here. And what I want is them to be meshed together in a good way, that it's not just like, okay, well, we split up each chapter into a separate PDF and we have the video above it. I want it to be like intertwined better somehow, of like the video pieces are in the outline of the book at the right places. And in the section of the book where it says make sure you attach the framing of your house to the steel trailer, and like use this technique. I want to see what that looks like. I want to see right below that description like a GIF or a little video of them actually doing it.
One thing you could do too, which is sort of meta. I don't know if you are interested in this at all, but it would be interesting for someone to take something a lot of people want to do, like learn guitar or learn Spanish or something like that, present it in kind of this hierarchical way, or this sort of video, this mixed media intertwined way, and then write a study about that, write a book about that. Like, present your findings based on teaching lots of people how to do something. That seems like a neat, like TED Talk or something.
That's cool. Oh man, I could do this with Genko School, the course I'm writing on how to learn to program. And that sort of makes sense because like learning is not linear. Learning is hierarchical. There's like multiple places to be pushing forward, and you need to know a little bit about every section. And then, okay, now we can sort of dig deeper into each of those pieces. But like to start a website, you need to know a little bit of HTML and a little bit of CSS and a little bit of JavaScript. And you just need to know like just enough. And then, okay, once we've sort of mastered that and pushed forward on those main three branches, now we can push forward on those three branches another step. And if it was more clear that like that was the way you were going through the information, it might be easier to push forward. That like, okay, I'm right now I'm just on the main branches because I'm a beginner, and then okay, I've mastered the main branches. Now I'm going to dig one level further in each of those to flesh that out. Oh, these are some fun thoughts. Yeah, this may be a problem of just like coming up with a better way of learning things. Interesting.
I'd be interested to see where you get. One thing I didn't really talk about, I talked about this the first time you talked about this idea, which is this is definitely, I see this as a nonfiction play. So when you're talking about fiction, yes, like that's really like if you're ingesting a narrative, I don't see you wanting to jump around, like nonfiction's pretty set. Fiction is pretty set. Like you read through it straight. But yeah, it's when you're learning something that this jumping around helps, I think.
Makes sense. Cool. Oh, good thoughts to chew on. Last thing, hot take on the project I'm working on with Sarah. I have so many things going on, and
Me too.
So many different projects. And so she works in a standard job right now and was sort of lamenting like, oh, how cool is it that you have income from a business? I'd like to do that too. And I was like, okay, like, are any of these ideas interesting to you? Like, would you like to push any of them forward? And she was like, a time tracker, that's cool. Because she used to do consulting work where she had to track her time. Her network is people who would use a time tracker. And so I'll tell you what I have, and then I think I've talked about this before, but I'd love to know just like if your goal was to make money, how would you approach that? So the thing that I built for myself is in trying to get a better handle of my own time, I built several different experiments that ended in this system where I can track everything I do. Anytime I switch a task, right now I'm recording makers.dev, and I can tag it with like makers.dev, and then I can see for the week how much time did I spend on makers.dev. That's the thing that I'm able to answer questions like, how efficient is my editing process? If I published a 45-minute episode, how much time did it take me in recording and editing and everything else to make that episode? And so how efficient am I in producing that? And that has been so valuable in my life of being able to do these time audits of figuring out, okay, what are my values? Where do I want to be pushing forward? What does my time look like reflected by that? And how should I adjust accordingly? It's sort of crazy to me that we can track every penny that we spend, but we can't track where we spent the time. So that's the thing that I built, and it's worked very well for me. And I've showed it to a few people, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool," and like, here are some features I like with it. And I don't know that I am the best audience for this product because I'm sort of like a life hacking, time optimizing person, and I don't know how much time I would spend on this. Maybe if it was a more bespoke product of that, the product is that you do a time audit on someone, and it's like more of a consulting thing, and like I'll meet with you once a week to talk about how you spent your time last week, and this piece of software is just one of the tools that I use to help you with that. But then I'm also thinking of like Amy Hoy has her time tracking company Noco that just makes stupid amounts of money, I think, targeting consultants. And there's a lot of people who I think need this in a business context who like it wouldn't be its original intended audience of helping you personally optimize your time, but the product would sort of become a different thing. But I could see that as a more straightforward business play if I'm looking for like lawyers or consultants who need to be tracking time and writing invoices. But like that's not an audience that I'm very familiar with. Sarah has a few people who need to do this, but she doesn't have like a huge professional network of people who all need to track their time. So I think we're both curious about ways that we could be pushing this forward to turn it into a business, and that path doesn't seem clear right now. What's your hot take?
Yeah. So if your goal is to make money quickly, then yeah, you probably well. I'll say several different things. The first thing is, my first take is you probably focus on a business where they have to track their time. I would say I don't know many people who like tracking their time in a business setting, but they have to get paid. So consultants, lawyers, doctors who move. So this is an interesting one. I actually did some work with this before. Doctors who see multiple clients have to track their time per client. So that's kind of that kind of thing. Doctors, lawyers, consultants. And then also there's all sorts of like, so as a consultant who has subcontracted for other consultants, I've had to track my time, not for myself, but for them sometimes. So that's a whole thing. And yeah, there's lots of time trackers. You could probably make a time tracker that worked for business like that. I think that would be fairly straightforward as long as you just like you talked about Amy Hoy, sort of made a, fairly straightforward, kind of lovable time tracker, even though people, don't really love their time trackers. And you can make money that way. What I understood from your time tracker, though, is the approach from the beginning was sort of different. Because, like you said, you're sort of a life hacker sort of person who is actually very interested in tracking their time. And so this is not for a work thing. This is for a, personal, like, I want to make sure I'm productive or at least understanding my time thing. And that's a whole different audience. That's a little more, really reminds me of like Nomad List, if you know about that, where this is like a whole group of people who get really excited about, traveling to different places and living different places. Or like Scott Cheap's Flights, who is like about people who get really excited about like airline miles and getting cheap flights. And so there's these communities that get really excited about things like that. I bet there is a time tracking sort of community that either exists or you could build that's like that. So that would be, for that, I would look more in the inspiration of, Scott Cheap's Flights or Nomad List or something like that. I bet you could build something like that around time tracking and sort of life hacking, that way. So that's another direction. I probably had more ideas, but yeah, those are the two directions I could see you taking it. Either going for the business thing where people don't really like to track their time, but they have to get paid, or their boss tells them to, or go for the people who are really into it, for no particular business benefit necessarily, but kind of this life hacking thing. Oh, the other thing you said was, so the other place I could see this is like executives. So, CEO of a Fortune 100 company, like where their time is worth, several $1,000s per hour, like they need to know, and their assistant needs to know, exactly how much their time is spent on each thing and how to prioritize it. So you could kind of go that direction. Like people who make, say multiple millions of dollars per year, it's very important how they spend their time, which is a whole different ball game, I would say. Those are my takes.
I love the analogy to Scott's Cheap Flights and Nomad List, that there exist communities who just love doing this thing. That sounds delightful. That's like, how cool would that be to build something for what now is like a really underserved audience. There's not a time tracker for people who love time tracking. There's I've dipped my toes in a few different places. Like CGP Grey on his podcast Cortex talks a lot about time tracking for like lifestyle time tracking, and has lamented that you're using these tools that are made for consultants and businesses and things. And that it doesn't quite fit in the model of if you just love tracking your time, like
Right.
getting a better sense of that. Oh man, that would be delightful to build something for them. Because how much different is that than building a product that people have to use
Right.
to get paid? You could make so much more money doing that, but it would be so much more fun to build something people love.
At the same time,
Okay,
like
yeah.
Nomad List and Scott Sheep's Flights are making lots of money. So, if you hit it right, then
That's true.
make
That's
money
true.
either way. The first thing I would do, then, if that sounds like you've latched onto that idea, I would go back. Indie Hackers has interviews, I think, with both of them, and if not, other types of. There are several types, like this kind of a category of thing, where there's like people who it's not exactly their job, but they really love this thing, like airline mile hacking or Nomad List or whatever. Go listen to interviews about how they built it, how they created the thing. Another one is Mr. Money Mustache. So he has a Y
Yes.
Combinator interview about you don't build a brand, build a cult. I think that's the name of it. I would listen to that. Yeah, all these kind of people who sort of build this. I'll call it a cult. This brand, around that kind of thing. That's what I would do.
I'm reminded also of Rome Research, this note-taking tool, calls their users the Rome cult, and their community is so vibrant and engaged, and like it does feel like a cult. It's a lifestyle to use Rome Research. It's a different way of note-taking that. And they're making crazy amounts of money right now. I think it was like the fastest product to get to 1 million MRR, maybe ever. That might not be true. There's some crazy statistic about how quickly they made money.
That's an interesting one because Rome also has a business case, and so that's probably how they're making their money. Like they get these fanatical individual users, and then there's also a business case. And so these fanatical.
What's the business case? Who are the business
Rome
users
Research?
of Rome Research? Yeah.
Anyone who would use Notion, I think, could also use Rome.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so you get these
That's
fanatical
surprising to me.
users who take it into the business and then pay for it.
Yeah. And then you can run the business similar to how you would use Notion. That's interesting. I wasn't aware that was a thing people were doing. Huh. Yeah, okay. So I like that angle a lot because if I'm going after the lifestyle of time tracking and I make a time tracking cult, then they could also be pulling that into the business. It'd be a very different business. It's like that's not a very good traditional like bootstrapping business because I think Rome charges something like $6 a month. And if they just nailed the business case, if they'd said like here's the type of business who could benefit the most from this type of note taking, and we're going to charge them $500 a month and have just 100 customers, that would be arguably a much better bootstrap business than what they have now, which is like millions of people using this thing. The scale of problem you have to deal with is very different. I'm curious about things like Scott Sheep Flights. I'm very interested in listening to that because that feels like a much more manageable business. It's like an email newsletter for people who like travel. I imagine the customer support for that is very low.
Yeah.
Cool.
Email newsletter.
There may be a way to do this.
That'd be a great way to start this too. Like once a week, I will send you, my top tip for saving time this week or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, that seems awesome.
Yeah, and just start growing the audience that way. I like that. Cool. Thank you. You've solved my problem. I feel like I have a way forward that I like, and other ways forward that are probably make a lot more business sense.
Yeah. Story of my life too.
Chris, that's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Then I will see you next week. Goodbye.
All right.